Today, I'm going to share my experience and expertise working with different companies on helping you navigate through, whether you're looking for a job so that you can better understand how customer success executives think about hiring CSMs, or if you are an executive or a team leader and need to help with the hiring process. Hello, everyone. Irit Eizips here for CSM Practice, the customer success consulting firm. These are the main questions that we see executives and customer success teams think about as they grow their teams. Who should they hire? What kind of CSM? We see different types of CSMs. This is important for you if you're looking for a job, because depending on the type of scenario, you might find that the customer success manager job is completely different. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to find out what type of company you want to work for and what type of CSM it probably is. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the great videos that we produce on customer success. How do companies test whether or not you've got the right skills? Or if you are hiring and you know you need this type of CSM or that one, how do you test for certain skills that are imperative? And then finally, I'm going to give you some tips on how to hire the best CSMs and how to look for the best companies to work for, basically. So the first question is, how do we know what type of CSMs we should have? Usually what I'd like to suggest is always think about it in sort of like a quadrant, where we might have two factors to consider. One is the product type, and then the other one is the type of business that we're going to be working for. So what does that mean? So this is the company type, or the organization type, or the business model type, if you will. On this side of the equation, there's some companies that have a very sophisticated type of product. Usually it's highly technical, it's very cumbersome to configure. So those are the types of product. When you're interviewing or you're thinking about who should you be hiring, kind of want to take that into account. Now, on the flip side, there's a lot of companies that we call product-led that are very simple to use. You're supposed to just basically sign in, get a freemium for a week or two, and then convert yourself as a customer. Or they're just simply very easy to configure. And it's not so much about the technology as much as just introducing new methodologies to the organization and just getting better at what you're already doing, maybe more scalable. So that's on the product type. On the other hand, you kind of want to consider, when you're thinking about what type of CSM you should probably have for your team, whether or not, is it a small business, a startup, or a large enterprise company. So I'm going to explain why these considerations are so important when thinking about what type of CSM you should be hiring. So if this was a quadrant and we were thinking about it, there's basically almost like, a decision tree here that you would say, okay, depending on where this falls, this is who I should be hiring. So if the company has a product that's extremely technical, and most likely what they'll be looking to do, and we're like fairly young company, lots of small customers that we're going to have use this, what we're going to have a lot of times is we're going to look for a customer success manager that's almost like a success engineer, someone with highly technical experience, lots of product adoption, technical ability to help, because we're such a small business, most likely they'll do a little bit of support and customer success. Lots of handhold, almost like, think about like managed services, lots of hand-holding for the customer. So that's one type of CSM that we often see in the market. What if we're a startup or we're working with a lot of smaller companies and it's simple and easy to configure? Then, well, the technical expertise are no longer very important. What we are looking, though, is to have as many touch points with the customers as possible. So we're looking to do a lower touch customer success engagement model, or rather almost like a tech touch or a low touch. So in that regard, we're looking for someone with probably marketing expertise, somebody that can do one-to-many strategies such as webinars and things of that nature, can write email campaigns and things of that nature so that it can really juggle a lot of customers as well. Now we're looking into more mature companies, and When it's simple to configure and it's an enterprise companies, at that point, the company is so mature that we will have multiple types of teams already in the company. We might have the sales team so mature that they will probably be handling most of the sales and the upsell and the revenue typically. And so here what we find is what we need to have is somebody that has some selling skills, somebody that has industry experience, that's a bit more consultative, that can best understand, so they're almost like the Robin to sales team, if you will. And then, of course, if the product or the solution is super complicated, highly technical, what we often found is that we're going to have two people on each account. One is highly consultative, just like the one below, but then they will also be supplemented by what we often see as a TAM. This is for the highly traditional companies, which stands for technical account manager. So you won't necessarily be the one that does the technical configuration. You'll probably have someone on the team that can do that. So if you are in the interviewing seat and you're looking for a job, think about these different perspectives and always ask the right questions to kind of predict what kind of role you're probably going to have. So now that we understand what types of CSMs we might have, we kind of want to know, how do we, as we're going through the interview process, what kind of questions should we be asking CSMs? So regardless of the CSM type, very often we're seeing 4 or 5 skill sets that we always want to see with a CSM. One is understanding of the product. The other one is just someone who can be super efficient. Then we have somebody that can create relationships, whether it's inside the company or with customers, by the way. That's also very important. Somebody that can know how to be consultative, whether it's in one-to-many, webinars and stuff, or in a one-on-one environment. Can they talk to executives? And then, of course, we have the last one, which is the analysis. Can we do analysis? And this is very important, actually, for startups or companies that have a lot of data. Doing analysis just makes the whole team a lot more efficient. So as we're interviewing people for our teams, let's say we hired a lot of people that can be consultative and efficient, and we don't have enough that know the product very well, or we don't have enough that can do the analysis, or the team is very mature. But you can actually define so that as you're hiring additional team members, someone with these strengths would be really awesome, so that the team as holistically will have all these skills and they can start mentoring each other. The next step is, like, as you're going through the interview process, many times most companies will start testing you for those different skills. There's so much you can do just being interviewed. So how do they test out whether or not you can be consultative? One of the things that companies do is they will give you a test to do an executive business review, what we call QBRs. They will give you a use case of a customer, and they'll ask you to create a QBR slide deck, and they might even ask you to do a role play and sort of present it back to the team. So that's one way I've seen many companies sort of test for that skill set. The other one is, of course, the relationship. We want to make sure that they know and they understand how to create relationship both internally and externally with customers. So another scenario is kind of like to ask them, if you were stranded on an island and can bring only 2 people, who would you bring? That gives you a sense, what do they answer? Is it just for, people within their team, or are they bringing also people from outside their team? You can also give them a business scenario of, how would you react when the executive sponsor left, and see how they respond. So this could be a great questions to ask during an interview. How would you deal with this? Executive sponsor left situation is very common. And the other one, stranded on an island, who would you bring? Let's go to the other ones. How do you test for analysis? So many companies, what they do is they share a data set. And before you use the actual product, they will ask you, what kind of insights are you getting from this data set for this particular client? So you can kind of expect, get some usage data set for a particular client, and you need to say, what kind of insights do you get from that? Are they low on usage? You need to ask for additional things if you needed to really give them a holistic analysis. And what would be your action items to get things improved? So really interesting to see what companies do on that realm. Let me say one more thing here. How do they typically test for product? So for product, typically what we see is that companies would give you access to their product, and they will ask you to demo the product, or will ask you to build something in the product and then demo the product back to them. By the way, so build something to see how quickly you can learn technical capabilities. This would definitely be for when you need some product expertise. Remember that original quadrant? And then they might ask you to just demo the product. And this would be, can you translate features and functions to business use case? So the demo would be very important. Next, of course, we kind of want to see, are you efficient? And so efficiency, what I've seen most companies do is they would give you a list, let's say like an Excel spreadsheet with lots of different companies on it, or let's say that would be your book of business. They might have 50 there or 100 there. So think about it like an Excel spreadsheet with lots of different attributes, the ARR or MRR, how big is the company, how many employees they had, how many support tickets they had, their latest NPS score, et cetera. And what they'll ask you, how would you prioritize your day based on this data set? So data set of your book of business, and they'll ask you to prioritize. Who would you schedule to meet? How would you handle your week? Those are the kind of things, and then you'll need to justify why did you do it in that manner, because really what they're trying to see is, okay, how are you thinking about things? Okay, lastly, I kind of wanted to say, there's a ton you can learn more about this topic. One of the things that we noticed is if you are in the hiring seat, kind of want to think about the hiring plan as a pipeline. You kind of want to build that pipeline of recruiters or recruits to make sure that you can hire the best of the best. So think about, to attract the right people, you need to amplify your investment in CS. You want to kind of say, what investments were made in your company lately. You want to make sure in advance you have enough positive Glassdoor reviews so that, when they look at things, they know that they want to work for you. And so those are the type of things that you kind of want to think in advance as you transition people over the pipeline. Now, I know that this topic is packed with information and you probably want to learn more about it. So here's what I recommend doing. There's 2 more things that you can do to learn more about this topic. One, I recommend download this. It's csmpractice.lpages.co recruiters. Highly recommend working with those. And then watch this video on youtube.com, CSM Practice, for more interview questions. Thank you so much, everyone.